I'm Susan Kiss, and I'm at the Knoxville Botanical Garden, and we're in the pollinator garden, which is a garden that's focused on native perennials that obviously benefit our pollinators. I'm standing in front of a lot of little mop heads here, and this is a low-growing warm season grass called Spirobolus, and it's Prairie Dropseed. That's the common name. It is a plant that I love dearly. I think it has great winter interest, and we're gonna get down and show you how to prune it. The Spirobolus stays like in this little mop head fashion most of the year, and in the late winter, early spring, it needs to have a haircut and style. And when you see evidence of new growth, it's a good idea to go ahead and prune back some of this old growth. So the Spirobolus is a small plant, and it has a very, very fibrous root system and very thick. So I think the best way to address this is to go ahead and use a pair of good pruners and to trim it about 4 inches up from its base. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing that. You can use your grasses that you cut off either adjacent on the soil or in your compost, or you can just lay it in an area in your yard so that the birds can use it to make nests. Grasses are great for insects to make homes in and to overwinter in, let's say. They also bloom nicely and make seed that the birds eat. They're low maintenance. Let's see here. And just like you're at the hair salon, you cut its little hair off. It's a good idea not to cut these too early in this, like too early in the winter time, is to leave these until you see the new growth starting to come out. And that usually happens in the early spring. And here we have our little mop head all trimmed back. Pollinator garden is full of native perennial plants and a lot of native perennial grasses that we love nowadays. It's very trendy to plant grasses. They're good for our environment, they're good for the soil, they're good for our native birds and insects and all kinds of wildlife, and they are low maintenance. But today we're going to actually do the little bit of maintenance that I will do on this plant every year, and we will trim it back. We're in the middle of winter, and it's a little bit early, but we like to trim back. We like to leave this growth growing all winter, but we do like to trim it back when the plant is showing some signs of new growth or in the early spring. And we do like to trim it back about 8 to 10 inches above the ground. If you trim it back too early, it makes the plant susceptible to disease and rot. The stems of the grasses are hollow, so they will collect water in them, and sometimes that can introduce disease and rot. So Marcia very kindly lent me this beautiful serrated knife that we're going to use to trim this back. You can either use it freehand where you grab a bunch and actually cut, or you can use a string or a bungee cord and cinch the waist of this plant and then wrap it around to have it more under control for you. This might work really well if you have a very large clump. Today, I'm gonna just use it freehand to show you. And I'm gonna take this, and we have our nice measuring stick here, about 8 inches up from the crown of the plant, which is about right here. So, and you just go at it. You can always use the stems and all this material that you cut off of your grass to, you can either lay it down beside the plant so that all this material will go back into the earth and feed the soil, or you can compost it. Birds will use sometimes pieces of your grasses to make nests with, so that's also a nice contribution to our bird population that you can make. So we all like to have our neat looking gardens now. And so you don't really have to trim back your grasses, but we do like to keep our gardens neat looking if we live in like a neighborhood. So this is a good idea.